And I need to thank and I need to thank Trevor for coordinating all the material. He has duly posted everything. So please do not hassle him. Because if you watch your WhatsApp platform, everything will be on there. So please do not interfere with his privacy. Once it's posted material, it's incumbent upon you to then go through the material or download that material and you keep it. We've had a case where somebody was asking for the program. Indeed, the program was duly put on WhatsApp. So obviously, people are not looking at their WhatsApp group chat. So please, I implore you to regularly check your MLC513 WhatsApp platform to make sure that you are current regarding material that Trevor would have sent. So it is my intention to cover the course outline in the next month or so, and we should be ready for our end of semester test session or exam session. Now, following the program, let me talk about Zoom before the program. Zoom is the way the university has suggested that we should conduct these lectures. Although WhatsApp will be our default backup, but the university encourages interaction, and Zoom is the way to go. They've also talked about us migrating to Google Meet, and they wanted us to use Google Meet this weekend, but I said, well, I need to familiarize myself with it and also establish from you Google Meet is actually a better product than Zoom. So, Trevor, if you can liaise with your colleagues, and then come back to me, say tomorrow or Monday, with a position on the electronic platform, whether we should use Zoom going forward or migrate to Google Meet. I'm flexible either way, although I'm familiar with Zoom. So I would naturally prefer Zoom because it has worked for me in the past. Now, still on Zoom, for us to have an orderly lecture session, if anybody wants to say anything, they are welcome, but they must raise their hand. And Trevor is hosting the link. So Trevor will then alert me that so-and-so is raising their hand and they want to make a statement, they want to comment, they want to react, they want to agree or disagree. So please feel free to raise your hand at any moment in the lecture. So just to repeat, to have an orderly lecture, raise your hand. Then Trevor will give me an alert to say so-and-so wants to intervene or so-and-so wants to talk, and they can proceed and talk. Let's avoid talking at the same time, and let's avoid engaging in conversations elsewhere which are audible on the group chat, on the Zoom link. Our lectures will go smoothly if we avoid that. Now, Trevor, before I leave the Zoom link, is there anything else you want to say?
In the meantime, nothing, though. There's nothing.
Okay, I would urge all of you to put your microphones on mute because I can hear a lot of feedback, a lot of talking in the background, and that tends to interfere with the lecture. And what I would suggest, Trevor, is if there's such a feedback and you can identify who is talking, please mute them. Otherwise, the lecture will be chaotic. So please do not have an active microphone unless if you want to say something. So put all your microphones on mute and you will have an orderly lecture. And Trevor has got the authority to mute anyone who is talking without permission. Otherwise, the lecture will be chaotic and it will be sad for those compliant members to miss out on certain aspects of the lecture. simply because we are appealing to somebody to mute their microphone. So those are the Zoom conditions, and Trevor is ably going to host the link. If for some reason there's a problem, please do not send messages to say I've been booted out or I've been silenced or whatever. Let's give Trevor the opportunity to reestablish the link, and let Trevor and me liaise to map the way forward. If Zoom has got a permanent problem, then we may have to resort to WhatsApp. But I'm assured by the university that Zoom is available until 4 p.m. Any questions at this stage from anybody before I go into the program announcements? Trevor, can I proceed?
Yeah, sure, Doc. I cannot see hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Refer to your program so that you can follow regarding the items that are being raised and articulated. The first one is to do with material that was sent. And we did send the lecture slides for stage 1. There are going to be 2 stages. We've dispatched lecture slides for stage 1. So I would suggest you flip through those slides, you familiarize yourself, and if there's any reading to be done by yourself, please proceed and do it, because the time is going to run out shortly, and very soon we'll be talking about the test and the exam. So I'm giving you the lecture slides well in advance so that you can do advanced reading, advanced research, and advanced liaison with your groups respectively. I've also sent out the course outline, which maps out the journey that we're going to travel in terms of commencement of the course and conclusion of the course. And it's indicative at this stage. Certain things we may not cover in detail, but obviously you will not be disadvantaged, because whatever material we don't cover certainly will not appear in the test or exam. But it is my sincere hope to cover the course outline as much as possible, if not all of it. I've also sent out the assignment list, and I've got a few comments to make on the assignment list. Regarding the due date for the first one, which is the group class assignment, GCA, the due date is 7 May. The due date is 7 May, which is next week. And what I suggest you do is, in the session this afternoon, where it talks of GCA presentations at 1500 hours, each group must nominate one person who can present the findings on the audio using Zoom or using the WhatsApp audio if there's a problem with Zoom. And that person shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to present on behalf of the group, you see. And you then polish up the presentation, and by the 7th of May, submit a polished up presentation, indicating the names of the group members and their numbers. And that submission will be sent straight to me. And I've given you my email address is there on the lecture slides. So please do not go through your class reps. There are cases where submissions have been made, I've not received them, but they've been made to the class rep. All assignments are submitted direct to me, so that if there's a problem, I'm responsible, or the group is responsible, or the individual is responsible. Class reps do not coordinate assignment submissions. So submit all the assignments directly to me, and starting with the first one, which is assignment A, by the 7th of May, which is next week. So that is the GCA. The next assignment, which I erroneously put as individual assignment, is actually a group assignment. So assignment B is a group assignment, and that will be essay type. Whereas group class assignment, which is A, is PowerPoint to be submitted next week. The next assignment, which is B, is a group assignment in essay type to be submitted on the 2nd of June. Again, you may choose who is going to submit it on your behalf as groups. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm quite easy on that, but the deadlines should be met. And that will be an essay type group assignment. So we've got group assignments twofold, group A and group B, or assignment A or assignment B. They're both group assignments. The difference between A and B is the first one is a class assignment. You're going to do it today. You're going to meet as groups today. And I'll be talking about that later on. Assignment B is at your own behest as groups. You meet at your own convenience, provided you put together the essay type assignment and submit it by the 2nd of June. Please do not submit the same assignment twice or thrice from different members of the group. You may have your own disagreements there. Please sort them out. And I only receive the first assignment. If the first assignment is incorrect, that is the one I mark. There have been cases where I received 2, 3, 4 assignments of the same thing from the same group. Why? Because simply the group members are not seeing each other eye to eye. I'd rather you resolve that, and whoever submits the assignment, that is the assignment I'm going to receive, and I'm going to mark. I will not change my marking. So the first assignment that comes on due date is the one I'm going to deal with. Please do not submit several assignments from the same group. And then the final assignment, which is C, is the individual aspect, where we're going to have a test on the 14th of June. In the test, I'll have a lot to talk about later on at this juncture. Suffice it to say, there will be a test on the 14th of June. It's going to be a true or false type, and it's going to be roughly 30 minutes, and it's going to be live, and I'll be telling you the details regarding the test later. But that's the list of the assignments. Now, before I look at weightings, can I confirm from group leaders that the individual groups have been formed? Let me start with Trevor.
Yes.
Can you say something about groups?
Yes, Doc. We already have got groups that we created from the previous sessions that we had.
Okay, so what I suggest is please email to me today the group formations. Whether the name is A or B or 1 or whatever, please give me the name of the group members, and that will assist me in collecting my Excel spreadsheet in terms of allocation of marks and whatever. So can you do that today, or can the individual group members or group leaders submit? Which way do you prefer, Trevor?
Maybe the individual group members can send them direct to you.
So, students, what I suggest is by end of business today, can you please submit directly to me on my email the group formations, the group members, the identity numbers or student numbers, and the name of the group. So if I can get those emails today, do not send it on WhatsApp. There's a reason why I prefer to use email. Email is more reliable. Email is, is something that is admissible in a court of law. If there's a problem with somebody's assignment, we can use email to trace that particular assignment or to investigate what happened to it. Unlike WhatsApp, because my WhatsApp on a daily basis I clear. So I don't want to end up clearing an assignment which I've not marked. So all assignments will be emailed, and this particular one on group formations again will be emailed. Please, if you can stick to that. Email is more reliable when it comes to official documents. So if you can, I can have the group formations, information today. Now, obviously, if the groups have been formed, it means the group class assignment can proceed smoothly today. You've got your own groups, so well done to you for organizing yourselves into those respective groups. Now, proceeding with announcements on the program weightings. I think you're familiar with the weightings. Coursework is responsible for 40% weighting. The final exam is responsible for 60% weighting. So it's a 40-60 split. So that weighting is sacrosanct. It's not negotiable. I think it applies to all GSB modules. So that is the weighting you should work with. Now, regarding the coursework, the 40% aspect, I've given you 3 assignments. Those 3 assignments will constitute the 40% contribution. And let me hasten to say the individual assignment of that component of coursework is key, because without the individual assignment, coursework will be 0. So you can't rely on your group input to carry you through to get the 40%. The individual aspect is very important. So you need the GCA, you need the GA, and then the test. So those 3 are going to attract the 40% in equal contributions. So that is your coursework. We've had cases where an individual is marked on the GCA, is given a mark on the GA, but does not do test. So individual is 0. So if you can check with GSB, that is the position the department is taking. Individual effort is very important. In some groups, in fact, there are cases where you've got free riders, people who say I belong to group A, but they never participate. They only enjoy the benefits of being a member of group A. But come the individual assignment, especially in this case, the test, if they are not involved, they'll attract a 0 to their coursework, which means they have to work on the 60% final exam. Please, somebody is talking. Trevor, can you mute them?
Yeah,
Those who are joining late, please, the Zoom link instructions are simple. Firstly, if you want to talk, you raise your hand, and Trevor will give you permission, and you can say what you want to say. And secondly, keep your microphones muted all the time, unless if you are contributing. Otherwise, we'll end up with separate conversations, private conversations interfering with the lecture. So that is on weightings. Group versus group class, I've explained. Submission dates, I've explained. Let me reserve the instructions as per the program for 9:30, which says brief on GCA and lecture starts. So I will end up with the GCA brief. Now, I also need 2 volunteers from the student cohort. One to do the morning summary, and the other one to do the afternoon summary. As per the program, the morning summary will be done around 12:45, just before we break for lunch. And then the afternoon summary will be around 4:45, just before we close, and I give my parting remarks. So if I can have 2 volunteers for those 2 summaries, and basically the summary will also give me an opportunity to establish feedback. It's a feedback mechanism, and that person will spend 5 or 10 minutes summarizing what transpired in the morning and what transpired in the afternoon session. So can I please have a volunteer? And that summary can be given on the Zoom link so that all students can benefit from that summary. And that summary also, it's an opportunity for those who have missed certain salient points during my lecture, and they can pick up that aspect during the summary. So it's a very good feedback mechanism, which I rely on to find out if what I sent out is what you received in terms of lecture material. So can I please have 2 volunteers? If I'm able to get volunteers, I'll then nominate those, summary persons. So while you're thinking about it, let me talk about the group class assignment. The GCA, which will be done today and submitted on the 7th of May next week. It's a group assignment, but you'll be given time in the afternoon to proceed with that assignment. And that assignment, according to the program, will be conducted between between 1300 and 1500. So in other words, you are going to combine your lunchtime with your group class activity. And then you establish who is going to present on behalf of the group at 3 o'clock this afternoon. No more than 10 minutes. And the sequence of presenters or presentations will be on a first come, first served basis, so that we don't waste time. We don't have much time to take those presentations. So whoever is ready, please alert me that your group is ready, and you can then start. Do not interfere with the presenter. Let the presenter finish, and then let me make a comment. Then I can invite the next group to present. Let's respect each other. Let's listen to each other. Let's also learn from each other. So when those presenters are making their speeches, there's something they are adding value in terms of the lecture. So please listen to it, pay particular attention to it, and please do not interfere with it. Let the presenters proceed uninterrupted. And then if you have any questions, you can ask them after the event. So that's the GCA. Now, at this juncture, let me stop and take 2 feedback issues, 1 on the GCA and 2 on the summaries. Volunteers for the summaries and any questions on the GCA. Trevor, am I still audible?
Yeah, loud and clear, Doc.
Okay, thank you. So students, there you are. Questions and comments on the GCA and volunteers for the morning and afternoon summaries. Okay, since I'm democratic, I'll let Trevor nominate presenters for the morning summary and the afternoon summary. Trevor, over to you. You're more familiar with the students. I haven't met them at all.
Okay, Doc.
Let's start with morning summary.
Fungai Chasia.
Noted.
Fungai, can you confirm?
Noted, Doc.
Okay, that's Fungai for the morning summary, afternoon summary, Trevor.
Benedict Chisale.
Benedict, are you happy?
Noted, Doc.
So Benedict will assist us with the PM summary. Thanks very much. Any questions or comments on the group class assignment brief before we proceed with the lecture? We've got a lot of material to cover. Are we all clear on the GCA for today to be submitted next week? Okay, let me proceed with the lecture. Give me a minute or so to set up my own slides. Now, before I go into the lecture slide, we'll start with slide 6. If you can turn to blue slide 6. But before we go to the blue slide 6, let me quickly, go through the course outline in case there are questions that we need to discuss or we need to tackle at this stage. The first item is the background or the purpose of the module, which I've covered in my slides. If you look at the opening slides, it's all there. And the common themes you're going to be hearing time and time again from me is the issue of leadership, the issue of motivation, coaching, mentoring, and results. And by results, I'm not talking of business results only. I'm talking of organizational results. It depends on the organization that you're looking at. So it's not just market share or profitability or cash flow or whatever. It depends on the mission of the organization. What is it designed to achieve? If it's a political party, it's designed to win the next election. So the way they measure results is totally different from the way Delta measures results. So at this stage, I'm very open-minded, although once in a while I'll be emphasizing the business aspect of results, because this course is a business course. It's part of the Graduate School of Business. So the issue of leadership there is very important. In fact, this module used to be called leadership, stroke motivation, coaching, and mentoring. And then the word leadership was dropped out. It was assumed that it's going to be covered anyway. So the word leadership does not prefix the name of the module. But we're going to spend some time, in fact, most of the time today, we're going to be looking at the concept of leadership. So if you are going to look at leadership in other modules, or if you have already done that aspect, then it would be interesting to compare what you already know to what I'm going to say. Because you cannot have motivation without leadership. You cannot talk of the concept of coaching, the concept of mentoring without leadership, because everything comes from there. So leadership is the foundation. That's why I'm starting this module with a leadership slide, so that I can set the tone straight. So item 1 will be covered certainly as we proceed with the lectures. Then item 2, it's very important to look at context. And the context is not geographical only. It could be organizational. You could be looking at 2 private sector organizations. And already when you focus on those 2 context changes, you say, what Delta does and what Econet does are 2 different things, because the context is different. They are in a different product line industry. So the context will be different. So in other words, the reason why I'll be emphasizing context is, if I make a statement in court, a particular context, you cannot superimpose that statement in a different context. Because the moment you change context, the applicability of a concept may change. It may apply, but the chances are it may change and it may need modification. It may need adaptation. And you see this when you do your dissertations. Context is very important. Whatever you do in life, in fact, whatever you say in life, context is very important. Because context can change the complexion of your concept. Context can change the meaning of context, of certain concepts. So once you change the concept, the context, you may actually change the meaning of the concept. So it's very important. And in this case, I'll be looking at certain concepts, applicability in Zimbabwe and elsewhere. And within Zimbabwe, it could be in the public sector or private sector. It could be in profit-making organizations, or it could be in NGOs. So context is key as far as that is concerned. The issue of a small versus big organizations. Again, when you look at the concept of coaching and mentoring, the way it applies in a small organization, and by small, I'm talking of 10 people or less, and how it applies in a massive organization with 1,000 employees. The two are different. So context is key. And context in Zimbabwe is key because you've got the formal sector, which is not doing very well, and the informal sector, which is doing very well. And I'm told Zimbabwe is probably around 60% of the economy being informal. You see. So these concepts we are going to come across are being applied, in both the formal and the informal sector. And each one has got its own rules. Each one has got its own peculiarities. So a concept, a concept which works very well in a formal sector environment may not work well in an informal sector of the same environment. So geographies are very important, but within the same geography, like in Zimbabwe, you have got multi-sectors. You've got tourism, you've got agriculture, you've got construction, you've got manufacturing, and then you also have public versus private, then you've got big and small, and then you've got exporters compared to importers, and then you've got both exporters and importers. So it's a mishmash. So you must always articulate the context, especially in your assignments. If you make a statement, where is it applicable? Otherwise, if you make a statement which happens to be strong and without giving context, it's hanging in the air, I can disagree with it. I can mark you down because you haven't given me the context where it's applicable. But if you then apply that concept to a given context, then you've completed the equation. You've, as they say, dotted the I's and crossed the T's. The game is done, the conclusion is finished. But without context, all you are making are general subjective statements, which in the world of academia have got no place. So whatever you say, whether you agree or disagree with a scholar, whether you disagree or agree with a model, give reasons and a particular context. You see. Then it makes a lot of sense. So please do not leave statements hanging in the air. Follow them through. And then item 3, we're looking at who initiates those issues: motivation, coaching, and mentoring. And at the outset, it is very important to say it is leadership. And the leadership exists at different levels. Leadership is not the CEO or the GM or the MD, you see, or the minister or the director of parastatal department. Leadership, you know, we are going to define it later. It exists at all levels. You see. So leadership should be taken to mean, you know, a responsibility to make things happen at different levels. And that will become very clear once we go into the lectures. So leadership is responsible for motivation. It could be a foreman, it could be a section head, it could be a departmental head, it could be a holding company head, it could be a business unit head. You know, it could be in the world of politics, a village head in charge of a village community. It could be, you know, a cell leader. It could be a provincial leader, district leader. Yeah? It could be a provincial chairman. So all those are examples of leadership. So leadership is all-embracing. It's not one particular pivotal point where leadership exists. It exists at all levels. And that will come out loud and clear as we proceed. The why, which is section 4, we're going to look at various models, and you know, the key one will be Peter Senge, but we're also going to look at other concepts like agility, you know, competitiveness and what have you. We are also going to look at, please, can you mute your microphones? Who is that? Plaxidis? Can you please mute your microphone? So we are going to look at various models to drive home the point. So we are going to look at the Johara window, which is mentioned under section number 20. We're going to look at David Kolb model, which is item number 19. So, you know, we're going to cover quite a bit in terms of using those models as a means to an end to drive home a point. I don't want to make you experts in articulating those models. I'd like you to see how relevant those models are to the argument at hand, to the concepts at hand. I would like you to appreciate how certain concepts who are going to come across are captured within those models and how those models can assist in applying those concepts to day-to-day living. So it's a means to an end, the learning of models like the Johara window, the David Kolb model, Peter Senge with his learning organization philosophy. So all those are means to an end. Do not be experts at articulating models. Relate those models to day-to-day living. There must be relevance between the concept and the model. And the example we are giving, say in Zimbabwe, there must be that relationship. And in fact, one thing I should make it very clear at this juncture is this module is going to gravitate around linkages. For example, if you look at section 1, you've got leadership linked with motivation, motivation linked with coaching and mentoring, and then linked with performance results. So the linkage effect is very important. And one thing you will see in the course outline, all these concepts are interlinked. And those who get distinctions for their assignments and for their exams are those people who then use the linkage effect. They will not talk about, for example, Peter Senge's learning organization and stop there. They try to link it to Johara window. They link it to David Kolb and see how relevant each one of those is in terms of driving the point home. So it's all about linkages. And when you do your dissertations, that will come out loud and clear Because your dissertation is the summary of all the modules you have undertaken. You see. So whatever you learn in succession planning is applicable in this module. Whatever you learn in change management is applicable. Yeah. That's why you see certain concepts are common to modules. They are all part of the course that you guys are pursuing, the degree that you guys are pursuing. So there will be those commonalities. So there will be linkages. Whatever you learn in 2, 3, 4 other modules, you see those things may actually come up in this module as well. You see. So that we end up with a well-rounded student who understands the concept of leadership and what leadership must do and what the leadership traits should be. So certain things I'm going to cover here, you would have seen already, and you'll be wondering why I'm covering those things. They are pertinent in terms of my module, but to you, they're also pertinent in terms of looking at the concept of leadership using a different set of lenses. So whatever you learn under change management or succession planning or strategic management, you then see how it relates to coaching, mentoring, and motivation. That's the whole idea. So that we create within you a well-rounded student. Item 5, I think I've said a lot about that as well when I talked about background. Then leadership style. Leadership style, will be discussed in the context of the style affecting the effectiveness of motivation, coaching, and mentoring. Because those 3 concepts of motivation, coaching, and mentoring are a function of leadership style. If you take 2 extreme styles, one autocratic, the other democratic, you're going to have a different effect on coaching. You're going to have a different effect on mentoring. You're going to have a different motivational outcome depending on style. So style is key in this whole concept, in this whole module. So leadership style is very important. So we are going to talk about leadership style in the context of the style affecting motivation, the style affecting coaching and mentoring. In other words, we are now talking of the effect on performance results, the effect on the performance of the company, on the performance of the organization. And then number 7, we're going to look at coaching and mentoring in terms of what they mean for the organization. Because there is a cost to pursue coaching and mentoring. But with that cost, there must be a benefit. So there's a CBA, cost-benefit analysis of coaching and mentoring. And leadership must end up enjoying the benefit of coaching and mentoring because there is a cost. So there must be a benefit. Otherwise, leadership will say, well, budgets are tight, the market is tight, where can we make cuts? Where can we make reductions? Then coaching and mentoring will suffer. Indeed, they've got benefits. So we should be able to quantify the benefits of coaching and mentoring because they are indeed a cost to the organization. And I've mentioned some of the scholars that have contributed a lot to coaching and mentoring. That can be used for your outside reading. And then number 18, and to me, that is the heart of this module, number 18. What can go wrong with coaching and mentoring? What do you need to look out for to ensure that coaching and mentoring are effective? That is key, number 18. So you need to be very attentive when it comes to that section. And then 19 and 20 will be looking at models. We'll be looking at how the Johari window and the David Cobb model are useful in coaching and mentoring. Both mechanisms, both David Kolb and Joara Window, are what I call knowledge transfer mechanisms. We are transferring knowledge from A to B, from the teacher to the learner, from the lecturer to the student, from the manager to the member in the department or the employee. So we are going to analyze those two models to see how it can be effective to transfer knowledge. Because the process of coaching and mentoring is a knowledge transfer process. Although it's applicable in different settings, but at the end of the day, it's one person transferring knowledge to another person. From the person who possesses the knowledge to the person who doesn't possess the knowledge. So the question is, in those models, those two models, what salient features exist for us to be effective in terms of knowledge transfer, to make sure that the coachee and the mentee benefit. And that benefit is going to transcend into the organization. The organization ultimately is going to benefit. Hence, Peter Senge, with these 5 disciplines, where he talks of team learning, where he talks of knowledge acquisition, it is for the benefit of the team. It is for the benefit of the organization. It's not only for the benefit of the individual. So, that linkage effect is very important. And then looking at, I'm jumping all over the place at the moment in terms of relevance. If you look at number 8, it's in detail. We're looking at coaching and mentoring in terms of how they appear as investments in the human capital process, in how you can measure them. Then we'll look at coaching and mentoring in detail. We are going to look at under 10, motivation in detail in terms of the intrinsic and extrinsic aspect of motivation. Item 13 looks at C&M, coaching and mentoring in detail. Item 14 is application, which is context. And that, I think, covers the course outline. So that's the journey we're going to travel. Can we take a quick 5 minutes comfort break? Let's stretch our muscles. And then after 5 minutes, we can go into the lecture. Trevor, 5 minutes break?
Oh, noted, Doc.
5 minutes.
Meaning to say we are going to come back at, is it 10 o'clock?
Yeah, call it 10 o'clock. So that gives us just over 5 minutes.
All right,
so
noted.
the Zoom link remains active.
All right.
Thank you. 10 o'clock, we resume. Welcome back. It's 10 o'clock. Shall we resume? Let's turn to blue slide number 6. Blue slide number 6. Blessing, can you please tell us what you understand by leadership without looking at the slide? What's your understanding of the concept of leadership? Is Blessing there?
Yes, Doc. Blessing Chitera. I think we are two blessings in this group.
Oh, is that so?
Yes, I'm using the Dean Commerce computer today. I am Blessing Chitera.
Okay, can you please proceed?
Okay. What I know about leadership is it's guiding people to achieve a certain goal. That's leadership. You'll be leading a group of people to obtain certain objectives.
Okay, so in
that's
other
my
words,
thinking.
you've got objectives, and for you to achieve those objectives, you need somebody who can galvanize everybody
Yes.
towards the objectives.
Yes.
What if somebody said leadership is all about instructing people to do as you please? What's wrong with that?
We have got different types of leadership, and instructing is sort of autocratic. It's a kind of leadership which is on its own way. There are different types of leadership. So I will not be on that side of saying it's instructing.
So it's not instructing.
It will be yes, instructing will be there, but it's kind of harsh.
I see. Okay, let's move on to somebody else. Nyasha, what do you understand by leadership? Nyasha Mazambara.
Thank you very much, Doc. My understanding of our leadership is having that ability to influence others to have some tasks being successfully completed as intended and as per the objective set. I submit, Doc.
So in your view, leadership is about accomplishing tasks?
Yes, through some influence of some sort from those who wield leadership authority.
When people say, are there any sports club or various society or church organization meeting, our problem is that of leadership. We don't have leadership. We've got a leadership vacuum. What do they mean?
Yes. It would then mean that, of course, things might be being done, but without the proper guidance, without the necessary guidance that set out parameters and set the tone on how things should be done with regards to the set objectives.
Okay. I think you're right. Let's take one more contribution. Tsitsi Madzingo.
Good morning, Doc.
Good morning.
Okay. My understanding of leadership is the ability to communicate your vision and mission towards a goal to a group of people so that your task completion is more of a group effort.
Okay. And if I can comment on the three contributions so far, nobody has mentioned motivation. So are you saying leadership is not relevant to motivation? Nyasha?
Yeah, I agree, Doc. That oversight is very critical. Actually, there's no way you can, as a leader, successfully achieve what is set as objectives without motivating those whom you lead. So motivation is very key, Doc. I agree.
Sorry, Nyasha. Somebody is talking in the background.
Okay.
Please, is that fortunate? Please, can you mute your microphone? Trevor, can you mute them, please?
Okay, Doc, I did.
Thank you. Nyasha, back to you. Sorry for that interruption.
Okay, Doc, I was saying it's very true that motivation is a critical factor with regards to leadership, because the only and best way to realize the objectives as set is through motivating those whom we lead. So motivation is a critical factor there. There's no way you can lead those that are not motivated. So it's an underlying factor to motivate people when leading.
Thank you. Back to Tsitsi. Would you say a leader does the work, or a leader uses other people to do the work?
Okay, Doc. I would say a leader shares the vision for people to do the work, and to do the work with the leader. It's a combined effort, the leader and the people together.
In your view, who is a competent leader? Somebody who can do the work, or somebody who can motivate others to do the work?
I would say both. For you
I
to
think
be
you're
able
right.
to, yes.
You need both. You need both. In other words, leading by example is what you're saying.
Yes.
You're telling your followers to do as you do, not to do as you say. So in other words, you want to avoid a leadership gap between what you say and what you do, isn't it?
Can I come in, Doc?
Please come in, identify yourself. Ntokozo, is it?
Yes, it's in Togozo.
Okay. Please proceed.
Doc, okay, I agree with Tsitsi, and I agree with the other my other colleagues, but I just wanted to add on top of what they are sharing, so as to say, in my view, maybe I will just make two contributions. In my view, the first one is that leadership. I think motivation is it's a leadership trait. It's a leadership trait. It's one of the attributes that a leader must have. Because there are a lot of attributes we have listed. We can list a vision. We can list the kindness, being able to some kind of agility. We can list. I'm looking for this one. Being able to conflict resolution, there are quite a lot. So motivation is part one of the traits of leadership. So we cannot separate leadership from motivation. Secondly, when on the question that we are asking, Tsitsi, what I can say is that there are different modes of leadership. While I agree with her to the point that leadership, the leader should be able to lead by example. But it depends on the leadership style that you are putting into place in that particular situation. For an example, someone made mention of autocratic, where the leader does not lead by example. The leader simply instructs the followers to take that particular instruction and execute. So in my submission will be that it depends on that particular leadership style that you are applying in that particular situation. I submit, Doc. Thank you.
Thank you, Tokozo. It's all about tasks. Somebody mentioned the tasks. I would rather mention it as objective. And in a typical organization, you've got objectives, you've got resources, you've got an input-output system, and the output must be more than the input. What you put in should be less than what you get out. Then you make a profit and you renew the organization. You then advance forward. Because if the output is less than the input, it means you're going backwards. Eventually, you're going to close the organization. And that's when people start saying there's no leadership, because you're going backwards. But if you are making progress, you are achieving your objectives, you are actually giving yourself stretch targets and achieving those stretch targets, and you are motivating people, you are attracting talent, you are not losing talent, you are enjoying synergies, 1 + 1 = 3, it means you're advancing, you're making progress. So leadership doesn't have one common definition as such. It means many things to many people, but the secret of it is a leader has got a certain set of resources. And the question is, do you make more out of it, or you make less out of it? Remember, those of you who go to church, the issue of talents. Somebody was given 5 talents, another person 2, another person 1, and the one who had 5 reproduced another 5 to make it 10. The one who had 4, I think, made it, or 2 and made it, converted it into 4, and the one with the 1 talent did it and produced nothing out of it. Leadership is about converting what you have and producing more. That's leadership. And that applies to any organization, whether private or public, whether business or social or political, whether big or small, whether formal or informal. You are given a set of resources, human and material. And the question is, what do you produce? Do you make more than what you put in, or you make less than what you put in? And that applies to our individual lives. Because leadership begins with the individual. Leadership is not an organizational issue. It begins with you as an individual. It begins with you in your family context. Yeah. If the family is earning, say, the father and the mother, or the father or the mother being breadwinners separately, and if the family is attracting $1,000 a month, and they will end up spending $10,000 a month. The question is, where are they getting the other 9,000? Those could be loans. So they're deeply indebted to the banks, to their friends, to their mates, to their organizations around them. So in other words, what they are putting in is a lot more than what they are getting out. They are spending 10,000 and they are producing only 1,000. In other words, they are inefficient. In other words, they are not leaders. They are not leading the family the right way. Because eventually, you are going to be locked up because you'll be indebted, you are going to be arrested, you are going to be sued because you are mismanaging your resources or you are misleading the family. In other words, people then say there's no leadership in the family. But going back a step, backwards. Leadership is beginning with the individual. There's what we call self-leadership. Self-leadership, self-management, self-motivation, self-mastery, all those are issues to do with the individual. And Peter Senge talks about that. Schouler talks about that. You cannot lead other people if you cannot lead yourself. That is the concept. So leadership is embedded within the individual. So things like motivation are embedded in the individual. You cannot motivate others if you cannot motivate yourself. So when you wake up every day, Monday to Friday, in the morning, and you drive to work or walk to work or whatever, you must be motivated to achieve the tasks ahead of you in that particular day. And if you are going to motivate others at work and you are demotivated yourself, there's a disconnect or a mismatch of things. Life doesn't work like that. It has to begin with you, the individual. So motivation is key in terms of you, the person, being self-motivated. Hence, leadership revolves around the individual. The individual should be able to lead themselves first before they can lead others. If you can't lead yourself, how can you then lead others? That is the question. And that is the question I'm putting to you. So is there anybody who can then respond to that assertion I'm making? That if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead other people. Shower?
Hello, Doc. How are you?
Fine. Can you please respond to what I've just said?
Yeah, I'm now in the meeting. Yeah, if you can't then lead yourself, you cannot lead anyone. Yeah, there's a saying that you can't be a crocodile in the world and a lizard in your home, implying that you need to first show leadership in your own setup. Then if you go out there, you can then exhibit who you are in terms of leadership. In many corporate organizations, we have seen people that are doing marvelous, powerful stuff. But when coming to their life or in their families or kind of smaller setup, they are not doing all those things, which is a mismatch. Then we wonder, are they leaders or not leaders? So I think your assertion, it is very important that you need to have the leadership thing in you. Let it work in you first before it works in someone else. And also that will influence motivation others to follow you, as leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. I like to look at leadership in the case of voluntary organizations like churches, where people are not forced to follow or they are not complied by any other things, unlike a work set up where there is a set of regulations, set of instructions, and people just follow because of those things. But where there is a free will, that's where mainly leadership skill is seen, where people just come in because they've seen something in you, and you have grown that. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, it's all about, ensuring that there's no lack of credibility. The leadership credibility issue creeps in when what you say does not agree with what you do as a leader. Yeah. In other words, your leadership traits are not authentic. They are not genuine. They are not credible. Yeah, people see through what you say. They will say this guy doesn't practice what he preaches. For example, one telling matter in the whole world at the moment is, if you say to your organization participants, budgets are tight, let's do belt tightening, let's cut costs, let's reduce waste, let's ensure that we achieve more with less. Then they look at the leader himself. He buys expensive furniture for his office or her office, because some of the leaders are female. He buys a very expensive vehicle. He entertains in a lavish manner. He spoils his family with holidays and air travel and what have you. But he's appealing to the rest of the organization to cut costs. Now, you end up with a disconnect. Even if the company is doing well, there's a credibility gap between what you're saying and what you're doing. And that is the biggest downfall of most leaders worldwide. That gap between what they say and what they do. And when you talk about corruption, that makes it even worse. You see, it makes it even worse. You believe the organization, even if it's doing well, it can do better. You see. So you can't say I'm running an efficient tight ship. That tight ship could be doing better with a bit more able leadership. That's why people always say what we lack in this organization is leadership. There's a leadership vacuum. Yeah. And we'll talk about these concepts as we go along. For example, the talk of leadership presence. Yeah. Without opening your mouth, people can see this guy has got it. You walk into a room and people can tell that, yes, he's got it. Why? Because of your reputation. Before you even talk about your CV, they know about it. They know a leader. So leadership presence is key. Leadership presence doesn't have beating of the drums by yourself. Yeah, it doesn't have campaigning at all. People will tell that this guy has got it. This guy is authentic. This guy, can deliver. You see. So having set the tone and set up the foundation, let me look at slide number 6. Now, this slide is very important. In the other module that I also check, that slide is the opening slide. That's the strategic leadership and the organizational dynamics module. That slide is also pertinent, because this slide is powerful and it embodies, it carries everything that you want to sum up in a leader. It's from the art of war, but when you look at it, you can apply it to any context, whether social, political, economic, or business is applicable. It goes as follows. And it starts off by referring to 5 attributes of a leader: intelligence, trustworthiness, humaneness, courage, and discipline. Leadership is a matter of, please, can you mute? Leadership is all about intelligence. It's all about trustworthiness. It's all about humanness. It's all about courage. It's all about discipline. However, now this is very important. That qualification is very important. You may have those 5 attributes, whether inborn or acquired, but if there's a reliance on intelligence alone, the word there is alone, reliance on intelligence alone results in rebelliousness. In other words, when you exhibit intelligence, people under you or people behind you who follow you, people around you who support you, We will misconstrue intelligence, and they rebel against it. In other words, they're going to react. But being intelligent is positive. But why are we getting a negative feedback? Why are we getting a negative reaction? Why? Because we are relying on intelligence alone. In other words, we are not exhibiting other traits, the other 4 other traits. We are relying on one trait. It's like a toolbox with spanners. And spanners are numbered, and each spanner has got a function, right from the smallest to the biggest. And each one has got a job to do. You can't abuse or misuse a big spanner where a small spanner can do the work. A small nut or a small bolt will require a small spanner. A big bolt will require a big spanner. So there must be a congruence between the spanner and the nut, or between the spanner and the bolt. So there must be a match. But in this case, a reliance on intelligence alone, while ignoring the 4 other attributes, will create a rebellion. How many times have we seen a very competent, very intelligent general manager or MD failing to lead? When you look at his IQ tests, he's scoring high. When he performed in the interview, he scored high in terms of the panel marks that he received, but he's unable to do the work. When you look at his university certificates, they all have distinctions. Yeah. He has done well, he's a bright spark, and he's intelligent, but he can't do the work, he can't deliver. Why? Because he is relying on one particular attribute, in this case, intelligence, at the expense of trustworthiness, humaneness, courage, and discipline. So that's intelligence. The next piece is humaneness. And the slide says exercise of humaneness alone. Again, the word is alone. It results in weakness. If you are a human-oriented person, very emotional, very empathetic to your fellow beings and what have you, people will misconstrue that as a sign of weakness. So you've got intelligence, you've got humaneness. So if you are going to rely on humaneness alone, people will think you are weak. And as a leader, they will not take you seriously. But there's nothing wrong in being humane. There's nothing wrong in being intelligent. However, there's something very wrong with using intelligence all the time or using humaneness all the time. So you don't want to end up being misconstrued in a negative way. Then it says fixation on trust results in folly. Again, relying on trustworthiness alone is going to be misconstrued. They will think there's folly. You're stupid. You don't know what you're doing. They won't take you seriously. But trust is not a negative word. It's very positive. And in fact, a leader must have trust in their own team. But if you rely on trust at the expense of the other 4 virtues, you will end up with a negative feedback, which in this case is folly. Then the slide proceeds to say, dependence on the strength of courage results in violence. Nothing wrong with being courageous, especially in the context of the art of war. Nothing wrong. In the context of, say, politics, social, business, there's nothing wrong. Once you make a decision, you must have the courage to implement it if you believe in it. But the statement is saying reliance on courage alone will lead to violence. Violence from who? From those around you, from those below you. Yeah. Because they will misconstrue courage to mean something else. And they're going to have a violent reaction to it because they may not like it. In other words, you will not be effective as a leader if you exhibit courage and courage alone. And finally, excessive discipline and sternness in command result in cruelty. Please, Abigail, can you mute your phone? Can you mute your microphone? Thank you. So excessive discipline and sternness in command will result in cruelty. Your followers, people around you will think you're cruel because you believe in discipline single-handedly. Yeah, you practice discipline all the time. Even where humaneness is needed, you're a disciplined person. You lack intelligence, you lack humanness, you lack courage, but you believe in discipline. So in other words, what this paragraph is saying, leadership is multifaceted. Leadership, revolves around plurality. Leadership revolves around being multi-pronged. Leadership has got many attributes. But the secret between a leader and a non-leader is knowing when to exhibit what. So in other words, you should be able to analyze the situation and tell yourself that this one requires intelligence. And you put intelligence forward. This one requires courage, and you put courage ahead of the other four. This one requires humanness, and the other four will take the back seat. So in other words, you have to know the context. This paragraph talks about context. Yeah. Let me give a very simple example that you guys probably have witnessed in your day-to-day lives. Take a boss and a subordinate. The subordinate is given a task and is given 3 days to deliver. A report back to the boss with the project outcome. And in the meantime, the subordinate is a bereavement in the family. And the subordinate has to travel out of town to attend a funeral, to attend a burial, which results in the subordinate not meeting the deadline. In spite of the subordinate phoning the boss to indicate that I cannot meet my deadline because of bereavement in the family, the boss reacts by saying that deadline must be met. I'm a disciplinarian. I believe in deadlines and it must be met. Now, let me get a comment from the class. Precious, my Siri. Precious, are you there? Precious, my Siri. Abigail Chiripamberi. Abigail, I can see your name is there on the screen, so you should be there. You're muted. Can you react to what I've just said, Abigail? Unmute your microphone. Abigail, can you contribute?
Hello, Doc. Sorry, I was failing to unmute my phone.
Yes, I've just given a situation that happens on a daily basis in organizations, and the boss insists that I want my deadline met, whether you like it or not, whether you have a funeral or not. You have to meet your deadline. In terms of this paragraph, slide 6, what are we talking of?
Yeah, you'll be an autocratic leader. At times, you need to consider, on humanitarian grounds, you need to consider your subordinates and give them time, not just to say this, what I've said, that is that.
In other words, we need flexibility.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
And
A good leader is flexible.
Exactly. Now,
yes.
That is what slide 6 is all about. You see, a good leader is flexible. In other words, a leader who is inflexible will say, I believe in discipline. The deadline should be met, whether they like it or not. But here's a situation that has happened, and humanity is now needed to handle this particular example. But the person will say, no. I mean, I believe in discipline. The deadline has to be met. If you can't meet the deadline, you're going to attend a hearing. And you're going to be given a sanction. Or you're going to be demoted, you're going to be fired, or whatever. You see. Now, that's not leadership. And this paragraph summarizes what leadership is all about. It's saying you've got all the attributes. For example, all the leadership styles are embedded in all of us. You see. But we've got one or two that dominate all the time, which is not a bad thing at all, but it's not a good thing either. Because situations change. In the same organization, you are going to have seasons, good or bad. Not so bad, not so good. And each season will require flexibility from leadership in terms of handling the company affairs. And you cannot have a reputation for discipline at any cost. That is what this slide is all about. And I like the bit that concludes when one is all 5 virtues together. Listen to this. When one is all 5 virtues together, each appropriate to its function, then one can be a leader. Trevor, can you summarize for us? What is the meaning of that last sentence?
Hello, Doc.
Trevor, yeah, the last sentence on slide 6, when it says when one has all 5 virtues together, each appropriate to its function, then one can be a leader. What is the meaning of that?
Okay, so I think the statements are when one has all 5 virtues together, each appropriate to its function, then one can be a leader. So okay, sorry for that, for the disruption. I think maybe the statement is simply saying that for one to be a good leader, one should have or the traits that has been listed above, like intelligence, trustworthiness, humanness, courage, and discipline. And if one lacks maybe between those items that we have listed, then it means someone you can maybe not become maybe a good leader. That's my contribution, Doc.
True, but it goes beyond that. The expression each appropriate. Yeah. This is a way. Sorry, before you come in, can I just finish?
Okay.
Is that Tawanda? Yeah. I'll give you the signal to come in.
Okay.
The expression each appropriate is key, it's topical, it's telling. This is where management common sense comes in. This is where management discretion comes in. Yeah. This is where context comes in. Yeah. You've got all those 5 attributes embedded in you, but you have to know when to use each one of them or when to use 2 of them. So you're talking of context. So you cannot ignore context as a leader. Yeah. In other words, you cannot crack the whip all the time, or you cannot assume that every person is a nail that requires a hammer, because that particular situation might require a screwdriver because they're dealing with a screw. So you can't use the hammer approach all the time. Neither can you use the screwdriver approach all the time. And those of you who play golf would understand in terms of the golf bag. It's got 14 clubs in there, and each one has got a function. You can't use a putter for the green when you are teeing off, because it won't give you the distance, neither will it give you the loft. So you have to know what tool to use at what opportunity, at what context. That's what the slide is all about. And that is what leadership is all about. Leadership involves common sense. Leadership involves flexibility. Leadership involves analysis of a situation before you unleash the solution. That's basically what this slide is all about. Then this slide is saying, if you can do that, you can be a leader. Okay, back to Tawanda. Can you come in? Tawanda, over to you. Tawanda, can you unmute? You wanted to say something?
Right.
You're muted again. Unmute and contribute. Before I proceed.
Yes. Am I clear now, Doc?
Yes, you are.
Yes, correct. Thank you. I was having a little glitches in unmuting my mic, but however, I did want to proffer that adding on to what Trevor has just contributed. I would want to say that I think all those 5 virtues, a good leader should be able to exercise emotional intelligence as far as mastering the interchangeability of those virtues is concerned with regard to the context at hand. If you fail to master the context and the demands of what type of virtue has to be exercised, you cannot be an accomplished leader. That is what I wanted to submit as far as in addition to what Trevor has said. But slightly back, I think we mentioned flexibility. I wouldn't want, I had a question to ask on that. Wouldn't the followers, unscrupulous followers rather, exploit that flexibility on the part of the leader to their own advantage? I would want to say a good leader should exhibit a wide range of adaptability rather than flexibility, because the followers should not know that I am flexible enough to accommodate whatever they present to me, including malfeasance included. So I would want to say that maybe if you are adaptable as a leader, that could give you the disposition to face whatever situation that comes your way in a way that does not upset the followers. At the end of the day, you can be able to deliver your result. Thank you.
Indeed, adaptability and flexibility belong to the same stable. A leader should be adaptable, a leader should be flexible. Now, your question about the team exploiting your flexibility aspect, they cannot, because flexibility on the part of the leader means if option 1 is not working, you do option B, you do option C. Yeah, so you're flexible. All you want is to set your eyes on the target, on the achievement of target. So if A is failing, you can review A, you adopt B, and you go for the target. So in other words, reviews are part and parcel of leadership. You can't say at the business planning stage, at the formulation stage, we said we are going to increase market share by 10%. Therefore, at any cost, it has to be 10%, when in fact the market is shrinking. And government regulation is making it difficult to expand the market. So this is where you need flexibility. Yeah? And if your team is telling you that 10% is not achievable, you should be flexible enough to dial down that figure. And the converse is also applicable. If in your business plan you put 5% market share increase, and things are happening out there, and it has to be 10%, you should be flexible as well, upwards, to increase the targets, to double the targets. So flexibility is key. That's why you find in your business plan, you may do a business plan end of this year for next year. You cannot say, we should stick to the plan at any cost. You can maintain the original plan figure as it was, but you have to do negative variances or positive variances. You have to do another reforecast. You see, this is part and parcel of flexibility in leadership. A leader who is not flexible will end up with what I call two types of companies in the world. One type of company, they make things happen, and the other not so good type of company wonders what happened. And I don't think you want to be part of the organization which wonders what happened, because it will be too late. You'll be bankrupt by the time you wonder what happened. So you must always anticipate things. And what this slide is talking about is, in simple terms, leadership is all about simplicity. Yeah. People complicate leadership. Yeah. People complicate this animal called leadership. But the leadership has got nothing to do with those complexities. It's all about, making sure that 1 + 1 will give you 3. Yeah. Then you're a leader. If 1 + 1 gives you 2, fine, you're on target. But if 1 + 1 gives you 0.5, then you're going backwards. You're not a leader. You see? The minimum is 2, and you're getting less than 2. 1 + 1 = 1. It doesn't make sense. 1 + 1 = 0.5. It doesn't make sense. You see? So it's all about, increasing the output and reducing the input. That's leadership. Where you can achieve your target with 10 people, why do you need 20 people? The other 10 are innovative, they're an expense, which is not achieving anything. Or the 20 people you have in the system are operating at half their capacity. That's why you need 20 instead of 10. But you have 10 and make them work hard, then you achieve your objective. That's leadership. You're being authentic. You see. So this slide, I think, embodies, in a simplistic manner, the attributes of a leader. But the telling point, the key point that you must take away, is to do with flexibility and analysis. You have to know what trait is applicable when. And that is where most people fall flat on their faces. They end up with the wrong strategies at the wrong time. Or they end up with the good strategies implemented either too early or too late. So you have to be on point. You have to be accurate. This is what the slide is all about. And this slide will remain relevant in the next 10, 20 years to still be relevant. So leadership is not about leading, controlling, organizing, and whatever. Yeah, that is the mechanical side of leadership. Leadership starts with you as the individual. And when you look at this definition under slide 6, yet it's talking about you, the individual. It's talking about you, the individual. Okay, blessing, the other blessing, understand there are two blessings. Blessing, do you agree? Is there a blessing around? Okay, time is moving. Now let's jump to slide 8. And you'll see me doing a lot of this in the interest of time. Now, slide 8 talks about leadership is the glue to the organization. In other words, leadership holds the entire organization together. Now, is that correct? Anybody? Before I nominate anybody, leadership is the glue that holds the organization together.
Thank you, Doc. Can I come in?
Yes, please.
Yeah, leadership glues the organization. In a sense, where there's no unity or coherence in organization, one department doing whatever they feel like, was at the end of the day, organization departments or whatever that constitutes a company, they are there to complement one another. So to complement one another in achieving the goal of the company, the vision of the company. So they need direction in those units pointing to the final goal, which the purpose why the organization is existing. So that's my submission.
Thank you. Basically, what that is saying and what Michael is saying is leadership has got the ultimate responsibility to make sure that the organization is fit for purpose, to make sure that the organization is propelling towards achievement of target, to justify its existence. That is the role of leadership. And by leadership, I'm not referring to the MD or the CEO or the GM. I'm referring to the different levels of leadership at every stage in the organization. In other words, you are creating harmony within the organization. You are doing away with chaos. You are doing away with the silo mentality. You're dealing with compartments in the right manner. In other words, you end up with what we call internal and external customers. The organization is made of departments or sections, and each one is doing its own thing, but it takes the other departments as its customers. In other words, it treats the other departments as its customers. In other words, the customer is king. One department will not fight another department. One department supplies its output, which becomes input by the other department, and ultimately by the external customer. The departments dealing with the front line, with the customer, out, like sales and marketing, and eventually talks to the external customer. But you end up with internal and external customers. So leadership is responsible for inculcating that culture of oneness, of unity, as Michael put it. The organization is one single entity. However, in real life, it's not the case. This is where leadership comes in. You end up with infighting, you end up with the departmental wars, you end up with sectional battles, you end up with one department starving the other of information. They want to do them down. And all they're doing is the entire organization is going to pay for it. And that is a leadership responsibility to ensure that it doesn't happen. And back to our module, that is demotivating. So if leadership allows that to happen under their watch, it means they are demotivating employees. And if employees are demotivated, they will not achieve the set targets. And if the organization cannot set itself to achieve the set targets, it means ultimately the shareholders are going to move in and discontinue the organization. They'll end up winding up the organization and everybody will be jobless. Why? Because the organization will be declaring bankruptcy. So ultimately, you pay for it. The employee pays for it, the customers pay for it, the government pay for it because there will be no more tax revenue going into government and what have you. So ultimately, it's all about holding the organization together. And leadership will use motivation as part of the glue to hold the organization together. You see? Because if the organization is composed of employees who are not motivated, either those employees are going to resign or the good ones are going to resign, and you end up with the substandard employees who are not good anyway, who should be dismissed anyway, and they will be constituting the organization. And that organization will not face the competitors out there. Yeah. It will lose market share, it will lose profitability, it won't grow, it will fail to pay its creditors, and it will fail to pay even salaries. That organization is going one way. Eventually, the demotivation in the employees will translate into malperformance, and the organization is going down the drain and eventually pay for it. So ultimately, leadership being the glue, what can they use to hold the organization together? And in this module, I'm saying leadership has got motivational tools at its disposal to keep the organization together. That is what I'm saying. But they've got other tools which they can use elsewhere. But here in this module, we are talking about motivation. And motivation is a precursor to coaching and mentoring. Coaching and mentoring are the tools that leadership can use to create that spirit of motivation. On that basis, can we take another 5-minute short break? Trevor?
Yes, Doc.
Let's take 5 minutes short break and we resume at 5 past.
All right, noted, Doc.
Thank you. Welcome back. Shall we resume? The next 3 slides deal with the historical aspect of leadership, in particular the involvement aspect of leadership. The reason why I've included it in the module is we should appreciate where leadership started from and where leadership is at the moment. Basically, in a summary, we are talking of the archaic approach to leadership, where it was believed that leadership was inborn. It's either you were born as a leader or not as a leader. And if you were not born as a feudal master, you become a serf, you become, somebody who is way down the ladder in society. So that has evolved to a situation where you can acquire certain traits for leadership. You can become a leader. You see, you don't have to be born as a leader. So even if you are not born in a leadership family, you can still become a leader by acquiring the traits of a leader. And unfortunately, some people do not recognize that they've got those traits within them. And it requires competent leadership or competent parents to extract or let those traits blossom so that the leadership capabilities manifest themselves. So some people who sit by and think they are not leadership material. In fact, they've got those traits within them. The potential is there, but they cannot recognize it, and no one can actually extract it out of them. So this is where coaching and mentoring come in. Because coaching and mentoring are processes whereby somebody can identify potential in an employee, or in a follower, or in a colleague. And say, but you say you don't have the ability to do public speaking, but you've got it. Let's nurture it, let's develop it, let's encourage it, and it's going to blossom. So it's all about leadership potential. And coaching and mentoring are in the area where certain traits that are embedded in individuals, that are hidden in individuals, are allowed to blossom through coaching and mentoring. And by doing that, you're in creating and developing motivation. Because the individual would then say, I thought I didn't have these strengths, but I've got them. They're now on display, in the individual and the organization are going to benefit. Because those attributes will remain, embedded in the individual until a coach or a mentor extracts them. And that is the role of leadership in an organization. And that is the role of leadership in an individual. I'm now talking of self-leadership. You should be able to identify certain attributes you have that you can develop through interaction with society, so that they can be for the betterment of your leadership style. So that's why a lot of people talk about exposure. Expose the individual to different situations, and those, traits, those qualities within the individual are going to come out and blossom. And that individual will make a good leader, a better person. Why? Because of exposure. So it's all about us being inborn with those traits, but those traits are decomposing within ourselves. They lie there untapped, and they create a blinker mentality, which somebody else through coaching and mentoring can unveil, and that potential is going to blossom. And people say, but we thought this individual cannot be a leader. Look what they're doing with exposure. They are now delivering excellent results, which takes me to the current position where the transformational leadership style seems to be the key. And the transformational leadership style revolves around the trust. It revolves around the relationship. This is a slide 11 I'm looking at. It revolves around inspiration. It revolves around charisma. It revolves around flexibility. And we're back to slide 6, our opening slide. And transformational leadership by nature has got all these attributes together that we covered in slide 6. The ability to inspire, the ability to be flexible, trust, to be trustful of the team, building relationships, empathy, humaneness is all captured in there. However, Schouler's contribution is key, and I'm going to read it word by word, because this is what we are dealing with: self-leadership, self-management, self-direction, self-motivation, and what have you. Everything revolves around self. It has to start from there. This course is about self and others. Leadership is self. You can then use motivation to coach and mentor others. So it's self and others. This module is about problem solving. The leader must have the capacity to identify a problem and craft a solution to deal with that problem. And that solution is what makes the organization propel forward or backslide back into the mud, and they regress. While competitors doing the right thing all the time. Now, let me look at Schouler. This is slide 11 in detail. Schouler talks about self-mastery. Again, this concept of self. Self-mastery. Self-mastery has got within it self-motivation. And Schouler says self-mastery is the key to growing one's leadership presence building. Earlier on, I talked about leadership presence. How do you build leadership presence? The answer is trusting relationships with followers. 1. 2, dissolving one's limiting beliefs and habits. Now that is key, according to Scholar. 9 out of 10, we blame others for our shortfalls at the workplace or in life in general. We blame the wife, we blame the husband, we blame the in-laws, we blame the kids, we blame our friends, we blame the company, we blame the politicians. But ultimately, according to Scholar, you have to dissolve one's limiting beliefs and habits back to the individual. Yeah. Things have to start from there. Yeah. When you say to your boss at work, I can't do public speaking, I can't do report writing. For all you know, you can, but you've convinced yourself that those limiting beliefs exist within you, and they will indeed exist. And it's only you who can remove them. And the word dissolving here, as opposed to removing, it's got a purpose. Dissolving means, permanent solution. You dissolve it. If you put sugar in water, it will dissolve. If you put salt in water, it will dissolve. In other words, you have done with the granules of sugar and salt permanently. Even if you boil that water and you want to go back to sugar and salt, you will not. You will get remnants exhibiting themselves. The original sugar and salt is permanently damaged or permanently dissolved. So Scholar uses the word dissolve to talk about a permanent solution. There's permanency in limiting one's beliefs in dealing with those. There's permanency in removal of the habits that are limiting. 9 out of 10 individuals limit themselves. In other words, they don't have self-confidence. The constraints are embedded within themselves. So the role of coaching and mentoring is to get that decoupled. Those in the engineering field will know what I'm talking about. They loosen that rigidity by dissolving that aspect, that constraint, that self-doubt, that lack of self-confidence. Once that is dissolved, you then blossom. And you become a better leader because you are leading yourself better than before. Why? By dissolving those limiting beliefs and habits. And it's only you who knows the habits. And it's only you who knows the beliefs. And this will become clearer when you talk about Peter Senge with these mental models, learning organization. And the learning organization is motivational. So there's already a link between leadership and motivation. And that link has to start with you as the leader, as the individual. That's why they always attribute the success of organizations to the people within it, because they are the ones who make things happen. But if you coast along with these limiting beliefs and habits, then you're going to have problems. No matter how much money you get from the bank, your company will not grow because there's no inbuilt self-confidence in you and the team. And that self-confidence from you must be transferred to the team. The team should exude with more self-confidence. The team must have strong self-belief. Why? Because according to Scholar, they've dissolved the limiting beliefs and habits. And it goes on to say, thereby enabling behavioral flexibility as circumstances change. Again, we covered this in slide 6. Yeah. That is the mark of true leadership. Flexibility as the context changes, circumstances change. So it's all about context. It's all about keeping your eyes and your ears open. If the world around you is changing, you also change. Because if you remain static and the world around you is changing, it means they're going backwards. In fact, Jack Welch of General Electric once said, if the rate of change outside exceeds the rate of change inside the organization, that organization is going backwards. It should be the opposite. The rate of change inside must exceed the rate of change outside, meaning you are anticipating change outside. You are anticipating change in the environment. So the true hallmark of a leader is to anticipate change. Then you take action now to preempt that change. Then you make things happen as an organization. But if the change outside is more than the change inside, you remain static while the operating environment is changing, it means you're going backwards. And you become that organization that wonders what happened when you are facing bankruptcy in the face. So it's all embedded in Schuyler's definition. Flexibility and exercising when things or circumstances change. So change management is part of leadership. And the transformational leadership theory at the top of that slide is key because it has to be part of change management. You have to inspire employees. And as part of change management, you must convince employees that they are better off moving from where they are to where they should be. That journey of the status quo and potential is very important. That gap, you have to migrate. Once employees are convinced of the wisdom of change, they will carry it out. But if employees are not convinced by leadership, then they will stick to the status quo. They will stick to what they know. Because human beings by nature do not like change. They enjoy the comfort zone as much as possible. But if you say the comfort zone is actually worse than the desired state that we should change to, then employees are going to accept that change and migrate to the new and to dump the old. So it's all in there. Then Schuyler says, while staying connected to one's core values, remaining authentic, the word authentic there, I've used it before. You see, that is very important. A leader must be somebody with principles, somebody with values. And some of the values are inborn. For example, thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not lie. No. You cannot be flexible when it comes to stealing and lying. Those are in values we are born with. Yeah. And according to Schuyler, you institute change, yes, but you remain steadfast on the core values. Yeah. There are certain core values in business. Thou shalt not bribe, for example. Yeah. Thou shalt not cut corners. Thou shalt not break the law. The law is the law. Yeah. But if your business is in the business of breaking the law, one day you pay for it. It may not be today or tomorrow or next year, but you're going to eventually pay for it. A lot of headlines hit us every day regarding tax fraud, where companies undergo a tax audit and Zimre discovers there's 100 million of tax due to them. This company was not paying tax, it was falsifying records, and ultimately, is the leader responsible? This is basically what Schuyler is talking about. You remain authentic to your core values. And those core values I've given some of them out. The business principles. But if you want to cut corners and you make a killing, eventually you're going to pay for it. Eventually, as an organization, you're going to pay for it. So authenticity, the issue of ethical, being ethically minded as the leadership is very important. It might cost money to be ethical, but it's worth it. Yeah. You don't run a business for today. You open it today and you close it tomorrow. You open a business for the long term. Yeah. So the question of values is very important. I used to take a module on ethics. It's incredible, the lack of ethics in business, worldwide, not just in Zimbabwe, worldwide. Yeah, the cutting of corners, the tax evasion that goes on, the falsifying of company records that happens. Here in Zimbabwe, it has happened in the law world, where management were falsifying records to declare profit, and then they enjoy profit bonuses as individuals. And that came to pass. It was identified by the auditors, and the value of the company plummeted, and eventually the top management got fired. Without mentioning names, I'm sure you guys know what happened in the law world. And that is the price to pay for organizations. And up to now, that organization, both here and in South Africa, is battling to regain its lost composure. So you pay for it because you are not remaining true to your values. You are not being authentic. You are not being guided by principles and techniques of self-mastery. And this paragraph by Skowler captures the whole concept of self-leadership, which then influences the way you deal with people around you at the workplace or in your respective organizations. But it has to start with you. So self-leadership leads to self-motivation. And you're halfway through. Because once you are self-led and self-motivated, you can then lead others and motivate others. And this module looks at coaching and mentoring as the tools they are going to use. Although leadership has got many other tools, and I'll be talking of them, but this module focuses on the role of coaching and mentoring. At this stage, let me stop and to take any questions or comments from the class. Trevor?
Yes, Doc. Sorry, Doc. How are you?
Yes, I'm stopping here for the time being and take comments and questions from the class.
All right, Doc.
Any comments? I don't want to mention names. Is there anything particularly worrying you that we've not covered well so far?
Thank you, Doc. There's an issue that you mentioned on ethics. It seems like in the practical situation, the issue of ethics now is something that most organizational leaders have thrown out of the window. It looks like people just, in running organization, in running entity, some of the things that they do, especially those that are in the helm of the organization, it does not show some ethics in that. So for greedy is because of ignorance, is because of this I don't care kind of attitude in courts, which have crept in. How is coming up leaders, can that be avoided? I know we have talked of self becoming your leader first before you get to lead some other people. But ethics, yeah, it's something that I'm seeing on a big.
Okay, thanks for the comment and the question at the same time. It's all about ethical leadership. I think that is the gist of your contribution. The answer to that is very simple. If there's no enforcement of ethics, people and their organizations would try unethical practices and continue, especially if there's no sanction to it. You go elsewhere in the world, your tax audit is enforced. Your lifestyle audits for employees is enforced. If you look at the manufacturing processes that damage the environment, it's enforced. Samples are taken all the time regarding the water that you discharge from the factory. It's analyzed, and if the waste content or the harmful content is above a certain level, you pay a fine. So that forces organizations and their people to be ethical. But if all those things are not there, individual in the quest for greed and profit margins, they'll take shortcuts. And if they're going to get away with it. Take the traffic situation in Zimbabwe at the moment. People can go through a red robot and get away with it. People can overload their vehicle and they will pass through a police roadblock or checkpoint. They will get away with it. People can ignore the speed limit and they can get away with it. So the more they get away with it, the more they can do the bad things. So to answer your question, it's all about enforcement of controls. And if you take individual organizations, if organizations have got a control mechanism, for example, to regulate purchasing, that before you purchase, a purchase requisition should be signed by you, the originator, and by your boss to approve the purchase, and by the user department. And if that is not complied with, then you're going to end up with no controls or weak controls. So the role of audit in a typical organization is to ensure that controls are adhered to. And those who don't adhere to controls are dealt with. Then you're going to have the rest of the organization sticking to controls, and the things will be done properly. So to answer your question, if things are not being done properly and nothing is happening to those who are unethical, then you're going to have more of unethics happening. That's the problem that Zimbabwe is facing. And it's even worse where the enforcers, if the enforcers themselves are, are violating the law, it makes it even worse. And corruption, I think, just makes it worse. Yeah. Because corruption basically is saying, I want to do the unthinkable, but can you look the other way? And if you do that, I'll pay you. So in other words, you're encouraging malfeasance, you're encouraging bad behavior in organizations. And it becomes a cancer, it affects everybody. You see. So if you look at hospitals, for example, there's a shortage of painkillers, for example, or shortage of blood. If you want painkillers or blood, you have to bribe the sister so that the limited supply of blood or the limited supply of painkillers is administered on you. So you end up with a rotting society. But there's more to the world than Zimbabwe. And within Zimbabwe itself, there are organizations who believe in ethics, who believe in what Skala is talking about. You see. So it doesn't follow that we condemn Zimbabwe as a whole unit. Within Zimbabwe, there are companies that are ethical. Within Zimbabwe, there are operators that are conscious of their reputation. Yeah. Within Zimbabwe, there are companies whose books of accounts are audited on a regular basis. And within Zimbabwe, there are business leaders who will not tolerate unethical behavior. So you cannot say Zimbabwe has got a problem. That's not true. Some organizations, yes, within Zimbabwe, they've got a problem. I hope I've answered you, Michael.
Yeah, Doc, thank you. Thank you, Doc.
Another contribution, time is moving.
Yes, Doc. I want to look into the transactional approach, the security stick. So can we come to a position where we say we've spoiled the child, like to say we've given too many motivators? Is there such a thing that you can actually say, no, these motivators are now too much for the workers, for example, in the organization?
Well, there's nothing like that because every motivational tool has got a cost. So you don't want to overdo it unnecessarily. In other words, you want to make sure that 1 + 1 is equal to 3. Yeah. Or is equal to 2 at barest minimum. So if you end up with excessive motivation, all you're doing is wasting resources to get employees to achieve what is in the business plan. If they achieve what is in the business plan or maybe exceed it, and the output is still paying for the excessive input, fine. But you don't want to do an overkill. You don't want to use a hammer to kill an ant. That's overdoing it. In other words, that's why I'm saying input-output coefficient is key. If the input is 1, for you to get 2 units out, why use 2 units to get 2 units out? Use 1, use half if you can. And that is the difference between efficiency and inefficiency. An efficient organization will use 1 unit and get 2 out. An inefficient organization will use 2 units and get 1 out. There you are. Any other comment?
Yes, Doc. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Allow me to focus my attention on motivation. I would like to say that there is no way leadership can thrive with demotivated followers. So I would like to say that the long short and short of it, motivation is key to thriving, enduring, and subsisting leadership. There is no way you could go when the followers are demotivated. For instance, I think looking at the cross-section of the society, everybody wants to be state house, for instance, or to pre-K farm, for instance. So, but intelligent leadership would have select some of the people so that they gather at the pre-K farm or at the state house, so that the others who aim to be there get motivated to follow what those that are invited are doing, so that they can gain proximity to that form of leadership. And it goes on to other sections of the leadership. You could find that all the followers would want to be close to the leader at that time. So I'm saying an intelligent leader should always examine the context and task characteristics to the extent that how motivated are they to be able to follow, to buy into the leader's vision and deliver the organizational goals flawlessly. I submit, Doc.
Yeah, Tawanda, you're right. Motivation is not a stop-start thing that you turn on and turn off, turn on and turn off. Motivation should be sustainable. In other words, it's a process that begins slowly, builds up momentum, and reaches an apex and remains there. You don't want to raise motivation and lower it. Raise it, lower it. For example, short-term measures include salary increases. You award a salary increase. Then after some time, that salary becomes diluted because the cost of living has gone up. Then you remain with those low salaries for the next 10 years, and staff are demotivated, and they're going to lose the staff, or productivity goes down. Then you do another blitz 10 years later. You know, that's not the kind of motivation we are covering in this module. We are talking of sustainable motivation, which is not a short-term gimmick. Yeah. Short-term gimmicks have got a tendency to backfire. Short-term gimmicks on motivation are tantamount to bribing the staff to perform now. Then as soon as the motivation has come down, they start malperforming. We don't like a stop-start issue. We are talking of a sustained motivational path here to ensure that once we begin, we keep our foot on the pedal. The vehicle remains cruising, or the plane remains cruising. You don't want to have stop starts, you know, it's unhealthy. And this is where coaching and mentoring come in, as opposed to salary increases. Salary increases are under the purview of a transactional leadership style, where you say to the staff, do this, I'll give you this. Yeah. Whereas other measures like coaching and mentoring, they are built on what we call intrinsic motivation from within the individual, as opposed to from without. So the transactional or exchange theory of motivation or leadership has got a short-term view. It's a stop-start, you know, process. Whereas here we are talking of a sustained motivational impact. You see. Even if there's a change in leadership, the motivational effect remains positive. We don't want the motivation aspect to go down the tubes as soon as the leader has left the organization, or as soon as a new MD has come in. No, we want to install mechanisms in place which are such that, you know, individuals can come and go at the top, but the rest of the organization, and this motivation remain intact. You want a sustainable motivational aspect that will give you long-term benefits, that will give you regular benefits. It's cheaper long-term to have sustainable motivation, because you may pay a high price now, but as time goes on, it becomes cheaper because you're amortizing that cost over the next 20 years. But if you have stop-start mechanisms, you get an impact now. After a year, it collapses. You have to do another blitz, and then it goes up again. While you're coming down in your motivational impact, you're losing staff, you're losing performance, you're taking the foot off the pedal. But here we are talking about sustainability in terms of the long term. The impact must be long term. Then, you know, you move away from this short term, high impact, high frequency type of motivation. You want it sustainable over the long term. Okay, shall we move on to the next slides? I think we need to conclude the leadership piece, but before we conclude, I would invite you to slide 14, which looks at some of the characteristics of an excellent leader. Because all along we've been talking about the impact. And what are some of the characteristics? What should be in the toolbox? What should be in the golf bag? And according to Scholar, what exactly are we talking of? And those are some of the attributes of an excellent leader. I don't want to go through the items one by one in the interest of time, but let me extract what I think is key. The issue of thinking big, that's key. for a leader. And that separates a leader from a manager. And you will see the difference coming through as we look at the difference between a leader and a manager. Is thinking big. This is where I think it was Nyasha who spoke about vision. This is where the visionary aspect of leadership comes in. Thinking big, think long term, not just big, but long term. Seeing around the bend, seeing things other people cannot see. Because once you say in the next 10 years, this is what I see, a lot of people don't see, because the long term is difficult for most people to see. So a good leader tends to think big and think long term. They don't exist for short term. It's the long range aspect that counts. Then picking up the torch, in the leadership journey, things are going to become pear-shaped. Things will not work out as planned. And a lot of demotivation can set in. But a real leader, a true leader, will pick up the torch when he drops it, and he continues on that journey. That leader will not accept a no for an answer. That leader will look at economic problems as speed bumps to be overcome and to proceed with the journey. When you see a hump in front of you, do you turn back and go the other way where there are no humps? You go over the hump. That's what a true leader is all about. So a true leader has got that fiber of dealing with challenges, of dealing with difficult situations. If the company goes on strike, a true leader will resolve the strike. The true leader will not wish the strike away. The true leader is going to deal with it and go back to normal. So you're going to have problems, and these problems could be competitor related, could be government regulation related, could be supply chain related. For example, the war in Ukraine, it caught a lot of companies unaware because they were getting raw materials from Russia or Ukraine, and it did affect the supply chain. The advent of COVID 6 years ago was a big problem for most executives, but a lot of companies who took that as a challenge survived. And those crybabies in leadership who could not deal with the COVID pandemic saw the organizations going under. Suddenly, those organizations went under. And that is the mark of a true leader, picking up the torch. Walk the talk is another good one. Earlier on, I spoke about people doing what I do, not what I say. That is very important. You then create a synergy between what a leader says and what a leader does. And, people around you, people who report to you, always examine, always analyze your behavior, you see. And that to them sends a true signal of you, who you are, as opposed to what you say. You can write memos, you can write notices, put them on the notice board about, what you want employees to do, what you want the organization to do. But if the leader acts and contravenes what he or she says, employees will always look at what the leader does. Yeah. To them, that carries more weight than what the leader says. So the walking the talk is key. Yeah. That's why they always say leadership can be lonely at times. Yeah. Because what you preach may be challenged, but how you behave, what you act, people judge you based on how you act. So being authentic is walking the talk. Then you end up with no credibility gap between what you say and what you do. Charisma is key. And, very few leaders exhibit charisma. even in the world of politics, very few. Yeah. And some people say you're born with it. Some believe you acquire it. I believe in the latter. It's something that you can acquire, because charisma is a combination of capability and the ability to communicate your vision to your followers or to people around you. So that gives you charisma. And it's not something that you can copy, because you cannot copy competence. Competence is a function of your ability and your hard work culture. Your adherence to ethics, it comes into it. So charisma is difficult to copy. You tend to be person specific with charisma. So charisma is very important. And finally, emotional competence. I think somebody mentioned emotional intelligence. It's all about self-management. It's all about self-control. And you cannot be a leader if you cannot control yourself, if you cannot control your emotions. Yeah. You cannot run the organization based on emotions. Yeah. You need a combination of emotions and rationality and logic. Yeah. Because emotion is the humaneness aspect of leadership. But the rationality or competence is the intelligence and courage aspect of leadership. So you need a combination of both. And you need to know when to use emotion. Because you can use emotion to galvanize your workforce to achieve your objectives. So there's nothing negative about emotion, but you have to know where to use it. And the moment you talk about emotional intelligence, you're talking of self-management. You're talking of self-leadership. You're talking of self-improvement. That's why as a leader, they always say leadership is a journey, you never arrive. Yeah. And along the way, you're improving yourself. You are learning from your failures, you are learning from your experience, you are educating yourself even more so that you travel the journey and enjoy it. But you can never reach the ultimate and say, I've arrived as far as the leadership journey is concerned. I can now rest on my laurels, I've done it. Why? Because the environment is ever changing. Those of you who are going to do strategy will come across the expression VUCA. The environment is VUCA. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. And that means dynamism in the environment. So whatever skills you have today, which are working today, may be irrelevant in 5 years' time. In fact, in the fast-moving world, take, for example, the US, things are happening there. Your whole business profile changes overnight the moment you have a new president. Yeah. Because the Trump administration is changing virtually everything back to zero. And you have to start building from sub-zero. So the skills that you had before suddenly become irrelevant. You have to acquire new skills. The war in Ukraine forced people to acquire new skills. The COVID pandemic forced managers, forced leaders to acquire new skills, to motivate their team in the face of adversity, to achieve survival of the organization and propel the organization forward. So what you did yesterday may not be relevant today if you are going to maintain market momentum. It's all about vision. It's all about remaining true value to your core, but being flexible. So a true leader is not somebody who says, we did this 5 years ago, it worked, so why change it? Change is the name of the game. So change management is key. And unfortunately, we will not spend time on change management in this module. But those of you who do succession planning, change management, maybe strategy. In my case, the module on strategic leadership and organizational dynamics, you are going to deal with change management. Change is the name of the game. And that applies to the module, to this module. Now, let's look at some of the differences between leadership and management. Can I take a comment from the floor? Is there a difference in the first place between leadership and management? Or this slide is irrelevant, slide number 16. Is there a difference between leadership and management? Anybody? Is there a difference?
Afternoon, Doc.
Afternoon, over to you.
Thank you, Doc. I think with leadership, there is that blueprint, those laid down rules, procedures of the modus operandi, whereas that's management. Whereas in leadership, there is room for free play. There is room for innovation. There is room for flexibility. I think that is where the difference comes in, because in leadership, you are mostly situational, contextual, and there is even room for you to react to changing times, changing phases, whereas lead management remains as documents and laid down procedures that are supposed to be followed as is. That's my submission, Doc.
Correct. So in other words, you are saying there's a difference between leadership and management. Is that correct?
There's a thin line that separates the two. They are bedfellows, yes, they are bedfellows, but the distinction only comes now with the modus, where I have said with leadership, you know, that flexibility is there and is pronounced highly and is situational. Whereas management is a bit restrictive because you've got to be following the blueprints.
Okay.
But there's a line where you really cannot draw the distinction, but they are overlapping, so to speak.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Of the two, that is leadership and management, which one do you start with after you leave university? Do you start with leadership and then you grow into management, or you start with management and grow into leadership? While you are thinking, anybody else who can answer that question? Otherwise,
maybe
we'll
I
go
can
back
come
to
through, Doc.
Thank you, Doc.
Please proceed.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. I think Shava had joined in. I think you start with management because you are more of following the vision that has been set by the leaders. You will be executing what is in the present, what has been set by the leaders. You are driving the team success, whilst the leadership is inspiring and influencing the whole organization to achieve. You are endorsing the culture, whereas leadership should have shaped the culture. So I think when you leave college, the first is you start with management, then you graduate into leadership.
Correct, Kevin. I think that is one way of trying to distinguish the two. Your entry point will be management, Then as you get refined even more, you can cascade, into leadership. You don't start with the leadership and then become a manager. You start by being a manager, then you can graduate into leadership. If you take a typical organization, people use these terms interchangeably, as somebody said earlier. But, it's a fine line. There's a difference between the two. If somebody says this organization is being run by managers, there are no leaders, what do they mean, Kevin?
It means the organization is more focused on the operational issues, so to say. And there's no one who is setting a vision. There's no one who is motivating, inspiring, and holding people like glue, as we spoke about. So it's more like we are just implementers, not people who are visionaries.
I think that answers the question. And I think on that basis, we can now look at slide 16, having set the foundation. If you take a typical organization, a profit-making organization, leadership will be like if your shareholders are involved in running the entity, they'll be part of leadership. The board of directors is part of leadership. And the CEO, him or herself, will be part of leadership. The top team, like heads of department, will fall under that leadership definition. And the rest of the company, at those levels, subsequent levels, as you go to the bottom of the ladder, they become managers. But in evolving a strategy at the top, you have to tap what is below so that your strategy is relevant. Because some of the frontline people you have in the organization may not be in the leadership team, but their views are pertinent in crafting a vision for the organization. So that aspect should not be lost. That's why they always say leadership and management need each other. Leadership and management are like hand and glove. There are things leadership will bring to the party, and there are things management will bring to the party. Then the entire organization will be galvanized to operate efficiently. So the management is not inferior to leadership. Neither is leadership superior to management. They need each other, but they operate at different levels. In as much as the general manager is not more important than the machine operator. You see, they are both important. Without the machine operator, there's no manufacturing. Without the CEO, there's no strategy formulation. So the two need each other. Because, if there's more reliance on one at the expense of the other, the organization will be tilted. So you want it balanced. Just like in the home, the husband is not superior to the wife. Neither is the wife superior to the husband. They're both important, so that you have a balanced family or leadership in the family. Each one brings something to the party, to the table. So a manager and a leader may actually be one and the same thing. For example, a CEO, today he could be a manager. He's a nuts and bolts operational person. But tomorrow when he's in a board meeting, he's a leader. He's talking about vision. He's talking about the long-term impact regarding the organization. So, it's all about flexibility. Today a manager, tomorrow a leader, and vice versa. Now let's look at slide 16. Again, I will not look at every aspect. I'll leave that to you to read. but I'll extract the key aspects. Take originality. A leader tends to be original. If you take a company formation, the shareholder sets up the company. The shareholder injects capital into the company. The shareholder imports initial technology to start the company. You know, he's original. He's originating the organization from nothing. You see. So he tends to be a leader in that respect because he's willing to risk his capital, knowing that 5 years, 10 years down the line, he's going to get a dividend, which is going to reinstate the money that he spent in setting up the organization. So when you form an organization, you don't have a manager to start with. You've got a shareholder, or you've got a company owner who is a leader. And that person will have a vision. That person is a risk taker, which a manager may not be. Whereas a manager will be looking at salary. Will I get my salary? Whereas an entrepreneur will look at his vision, is prepared to sink $10,000 today, hoping to make, $20,000 the next year. So an entrepreneur is a leader. Whereas in the case of company formation, once you form the company, the shareholder is going to recruit management to run the organization. That's when your manager will creep in. You see, he is not the originator, but he'll be told by the leader, by the entrepreneur, what to look out for in terms of quality standards, in terms of cost management, in terms of recruitment. And then as time goes on, the manager will then take over the responsibility as the shareholder takes the back seat and attends board meetings. Look at people. A leader is a people's person, or rather is more of a people's person than a manager. A manager is the systems and structure person. Do we have the right systems in place, control systems in place? Do we have the right structure? An entrepreneur may not have the right structure, may have the vision to make money, but cannot come up with a competent structure or competent systems to control the loss of revenue. But a manager can set up control mechanisms. A manager can set up systems that work. A manager can set up a structure that works and populate it efficiently. Because that is what the manager does. A manager is a nuts and bolts person, is a details person, whereas a leader is the concept person. But if the leader is failing to communicate his vision, is failing to break down his people aspect, people vision, then there's a problem because the leader and the manager cannot communicate. So the leader must be a good communicator so that the manager knows what is expected as far as this enterprise is concerned. In terms of dimension, a leader tends to be more long range than the manager. He's in the business for the long haul, whereas a manager will be in the business for as long as he subsists in the organization. If he signed a 5-year contract, a manager will make decisions designed to ensure that the organization is profitable in those 5 years. But a leader is different. A leader will look beyond the 5 years. And a leader can replace that manager. Why? Because the leader has got a long range horizon compared to the manager. Look at slide 17 in terms of the questions they ask. A leader will ask what and why, especially the why. Why are we doing this? Whereas the manager will ask, how should I do it? And when do you want me to, do you want it done? Is a deadlines person, operational. How do you want it? When do you want it? A leader will say what and why. What business should we go in when he's setting up the business? That is the question a leader will ask himself. What business should we go into? What business are we in? What is our core business? Everything you guys are doing is straying away from the core. Go back to the knitting, go back to the core. That is the sort of question you would ask. The leader will also ask the manager, why are we doing this? Are we enhancing the bottom line? Why are we doing it? So in fact, in terms of the barrage of questions, a leader tends to ask more questions than a manager. A manager implements. A leader will ask questions. And in a typical commercial organization, this is the preserve of the board of directors and the shareholders. At the AGM, shareholders can ask questions. Why are we doing our books in local currency when everybody else is doing their books in foreign currency? What is the benefit? Why are we doing it? You see, the share price is being affected. Take, for example, Elon Musk, the work he's doing for the government and the work he does for Tesla. The Tesla shareholders are asking, why are you spending so much time doing American government business at the expense of Tesla? Don't you see that the share price of Tesla is coming down because of your activities in the government? Those are the questions they will ask. And finally, at the bottom there, under leader, there's the right thing, and then under manager, there's things right. A leader will believe in doing the right thing, and a manager will believe in doing things right. What is the difference? Kevin, is there a difference?
Yes, there is a difference. I think it goes back to someone who is setting direction. That is leadership. What are we supposed to be doing, which is good for our business? And now the manager will ask, how should I do it so that I do it correctly?
I think that is the word. A leader, you see, is an ethical person. The leader will believe in doing something that is effective, whereas a manager will do something that is efficient. A manager will not hesitate in cutting corners to achieve his goal. And the leader will say, no, guys, let's not take shortcuts. Let's do the right thing. Although it might take more time, although it might cost more money, let's do the right thing for the government, for the community, for the society, and other publics. Whereas a manager will do things right. He will do, things efficiently. Yeah. Why spend $2 where $1 is enough? Whereas the leader would say, you know what? We are manufacturing, we're discharging effluent into the river, and we are destroying the fish and the marine life. And we are polluting the water that the community drinks. That's what a leader would say. A manager would say, but if we have to avoid all that, it means we have to spend more money treating our effluent before we discharge it into the river. And that will reduce our profits and make our bottom line less attractive. You see where the difference is. But a leader would say, let's do the right thing. Let's avoid pollution. Let's do the right thing. Let's pay our taxes on time. Let's do the right thing. Let's pay our taxes in the currency of trading. If our business is 90% Forex, let's pay our tax in Forex. But a manager would say, why don't we do this so that we save money? You see, because he takes a short-term view. And that short-term view can actually be very profitable for the organization. But long-term, once the authorities catch up with you, there's a problem. So a leader is more ethical. No matter how much it's going to cost, let's stick to the laws of the land. That's what a leader will stick to. That's what a leader would say. Whereas a manager is a systems person. He's looking at his profit bonus, profit sharing. He's looking at the performance of the company. He's looking at his 5-year performance contract, and he wants to ensure that the share price continues to increase in those 5 years. What happens after 5 years, he doesn't care. For all you know, he would have retired by then. But the owner of the company will not retire from the company. He will still own the company, even well after the CEO is retired. So there's a difference there. But the parting remark I would like to make is the two concepts, leadership and management, need each other. Yeah. It's a question of extent. In an upstart where you're starting the organization from nothing, from sub-zero or from zero, the lead and the manager are one. We've had companies where the founder of the company is MD, is a finance director, is marketing director, is a supply chain director. He or she does everything. But as the organization grows, you end up with a structure. This is where management comes in terms of populating that structure. Then the founder of the company takes a step back. The founder of the company starts retreating, you see, and allowing managers to run the company. But he still maintains a watch on the company because he's the one who founded it, and he wants to make sure it's a success. Whereas if a manager does his own thing and the company fails, the manager can leave and still get another job. Whereas the leader has sunk a lot of funds into the organization. So he wants to make sure that it succeeds. So again, there's a difference there. But they need each other. In a typical commercial organization, the line is blurred. But as I said earlier, your board of directors, your chairman, your CEO, your GM, even your top leadership team, they are part of leadership. Then the rest are management. But in this module, when we are talking of leadership existing at all levels, that includes management. So we can actually use the terms leadership and management interchangeably. But what I've got on slide 16 and 17 are some of the areas that lay emphasis on certain aspects so that you understand the two. But ultimately, your entry point is the key difference. When you are still green in a commercial environment or in whatever environment you are, you start in management. You don't start in leadership. Then you grow, you rise up to leadership. That is your guiding aspect. Now let me see what we need to cover, because we need to touch on motivation today. Let's look at slide 18. Let's look at slide 18. Now, there's mention of Peter Drucker there. And that expression, that bullet point at the bottom, that's what I want to refer to. Peter Drucker talks about the emergence of the knowledge worker. He's talking about gone are the days where you tell an employee what to do. and they wait for you for the next instruction. The modern employee knows what he or she is supposed to do. They're actually more of an expert in their job than you as the leader. If they go on strike, the company grinds to a halt. Because the knowledge worker is very knowledgeable. The knowledge worker wants to be left alone. Yeah. The knowledge worker doesn't want to be told what to do. They know what they have to do. Yeah. And they actually know the job more than you, the boss. So the way you manage or the way you lead that type of worker is very important in terms of motivation. Yeah. Because these are the guys who don't want the leader to be, breathing down their necks all the time. They want to be left alone. So if the leader is going to adopt a micromanaging style, you are going to demotivate such a worker. That's the reason why I'm quoting Peter Drucker there. You see. So the management of these employees is key. You need a different democratic style of leadership or style to deal with the knowledge worker. You see. Tell them the rationale, give them the task, let them do it. And that is motivating. And they will achieve company goals. So the concept of congruence is very important, you see, because congruence in this case emanates from the individual goals and the company goals. And some people call it line of sight, where you try to have congruence between the individual and company goals. Because if there's a variance between individual and company goals, then there's a disconnect. The individual is pulling in his direction, and the company wants to go in a certain direction. So the reason why you need congruence is to avoid a disconnect, is to avoid a discord, is to avoid confusion and chaos in the organization. So you want to hammer congruence out of the individual and the organization, which is Peter Senger's precept when he talks of the organization, when he talks of team learning for the benefit of the organization. You want to reconcile the individual to the organization. The individual might be self-motivated, but if the rest of the employees are not motivated, you are not achieving anything. So you need congruence. Instead of training one individual who will then be motivated, you must train everybody. This is the precept of coaching and mentoring. You cannot coach, a select few. You have to cascade down the line to all employees to ensure that you have a learning organization, as Peter Senge defines it. Then the last point on slide 18 is talking about the relationship between managers and leadership, where it's saying good managers transcend into leadership roles. But not all good managers will become good leaders. Can I get a comment to that from the class? Good managers transcend into leadership, although not all good managers will become good leaders. Nyasha, are you still there?
I'm still there, Doc, yes.
What's your view on that? Good managers get promoted into leadership, but not all good managers will become good leaders.
Yeah, I think it all comes back then to the issues of actually conceptualizing and embedding those virtues, the discipline, trustworthiness, humanity, that will then be able to mold someone, to hone someone as a manager to become and to transform into a leadership. Because it is not just being a manager that will then transcend someone into leadership, but there is the art and science of learning there, the practical aspect and the theory issues there, so that one will be molded into leadership. That would be my take there, Doc.
You're right. Managers are many, leaders are few. Management positions are many, leadership positions are limited. That's the reason. So the entry point can accommodate a lot more people, but at the top it's limited in terms of number. There's only one CEO, maybe at most there are 5 heads of a department or the top leadership team, but you may have 30 managers. So, the fact that a manager is not promoted to become a leader doesn't mean he's a bad person. Yeah, no, it doesn't mean that. It means you're a good manager, you see. Leadership, you need to be extraordinary. You need to be, an excellent manager to become a good leader. So the entry point for leadership is narrower than the entry point for management. That's the difference. The demands for a leader are more rigorous than the demands for a manager. That's why, the man in the street talks about the problem with this organization or this country or this region is leadership. Yeah, because it's a very rare phenomenon, you see. For you to be a leader, yeah, you have to go through the mill of management, you see. And you get tested, you get tried in management. And then you transcend into leadership. But unfortunately, even the board chairman, even the board of directors in certain organizations is composed of managers. So you get managers leading the organizations. Then you end up with no strategy at all. You end up with malperformance. You end up being targets, with targets being missed all the time. And you end up with the organization becoming a joke. Because people who are supposed to be leaders are actually managers. They are the ones running the organization. Take, for example, parastatals. The reason why most parastatals in the land are malperforming is because the top leadership team there is actually management teams. Yeah, there's no vision, there's no accountability, there's no pride in terms of self-direction, self-enrichment, self-motivation, and what have you. Yes. And unfortunately, the parent ministries are also in that crisis situation, where the director in charge of that parastatal is also a manager. Doesn't focus on strategy. They focus on operational issues. Where you get a permanent sec phoning, say, the GM of a parastatal to give a directive on tariff increases. Take ZESA, for example. Before you increase tariffs, you have to go to the ministry. And you get a non-engineer making a decision on an engineering issue without justification, yes or no, without reasons, without rationality, without rational thinking. So you end up with that sort of scenario where eventually wrong policies are adopted and unfortunately accountability is also not respected. If there's a problem with ZESA, the first thing is fire the general manager of ZESA. But decisions are being taken by the parent ministry. So why don't you dismiss the minister concerned or the DG or the PEMSEC concerned? Because that's where decisions are being taken. And the GM of that parastatal is simply a manager, is not a leader of that organization. So it's very important to distinguish between a manager and a leader. The two are different. A manager is a bin counter, whereas a leader generates the bins in the first place for the bin counter to count. If I were to use, an expression from the street, that is what I would say is the key difference. A leader will make things happen, whereas a manager will preserve what has happened, but he's not the one who causes things to happen. The leader will come up with the formula for success. The manager will maintain that formula to ensure that there's a continuity in success. I think by now I should have made myself clear regarding these two concepts. Now let's take, we've got a summary coming up. It's 1:45 in 15 minutes time. Fungai, can you confirm that you've started working on the summary?
Confirmed, Doc.
Okay, we'll give you the floor in the next 15 minutes. Let's take a 5 minutes break. Then I can wrap up for the morning. And then we can give Fungai the opportunity to summarize. Trevor, 5 minutes?
Okay, Doc.
Thank you. Welcome back. We've got 10 minutes. Before we get our summary and you guys can break for lunch and do the GCA, slide 19 refers, we are now going into motivation, having laid the ground for leadership. Keep in mind that there's a linkage between leadership and motivation. And that linkage is going to be carried through into coaching and motivation. So coaching and mentoring and results or performance outcome towards the end. The first point is motivation is a means to an end. Motivation is not pursued for the sake of it. It's pursued because motivation leads to something else. And in this module, we're talking of motivation being linked to performance outcome through coaching and mentoring. So motivation is being pursued as a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. I think somebody asked the question about excessive motivation. Is that right or wrong? Yes, excessive motivation, which doesn't achieve an outcome, is a waste of time. So motivation is a means to an end. Coaching and mentoring are also a means to an end. You see. Well, if your coaching and mentoring does not lead to performance improvement, whether at the organizational or individual level, it's a waste of time. Why? Because coaching and mentoring cost money. So they must lead to a business improvement situation. Coaching and mentoring are processes at the disposal of leadership. In other words, coaching and mentoring are not an event. They are not a magic wand. They are processes. They take time to take root, they take time to install, and they take time to yield the results. Therefore, patience is required. Therefore, continuous investment is needed. Hence, the question is coaching and mentoring a cost or an investment? Are they an expense or an investment? You will see that embedded in the course outline. The effectiveness of coaching and mentoring depends on style, as I said earlier on. Because the leadership style, some people prefer to call it management style, especially if you're dealing with lower levels in the organization hierarchy. That style will determine the effectiveness of coaching and mentoring. That's why we have taken the trouble to look at style. Because your leadership style will determine the effectiveness of coaching and mentoring. Why? Because your leadership style will determine motivation that accrues out of coaching and mentoring. The person who is the coachee or the mentee should be motivated at the end of the process to produce business results compared to yesterday. But if the style does not lead to that, then there's no linkage. You see. So leadership, motivation, coaching, mentoring, and business improvement is very important. That linkage must always be key. Now, let's look at slide 23. We are now cascading more into motivation and less leadership, but there's a link. You can see slide 23 links the two. What is the role of leadership in creating motivation? Various points are mentioned there. The key one is leadership is access to resources. That is key. Leadership has got access to resources. You can substitute that to mean management has got access to resources. The question of linking leadership to resources is very important. And those resources are material or human or both. That's what is making leadership unique in terms of boosting motivation. The second point is also key. Leadership exists at all levels, from the top to the bottom. In other words, the leadership is pervasive in the entire organization. It dominates the organization. The chain of command is strong, like in the army, from the general to the foot soldier. So the command given at the general stage is the same as the command received by a foot soldier out in Lupani. The same with leadership in organizations at all levels. Because if leadership only exists at the top and there's a vacuum in between, there's no way that organization can be called healthy. Because instructions given at the top will fizzle out before they reach the bottom. Concerns at the bottom will not reach the top because there's a vacuum. So you need leaders in between at different levels of the organization to make it a vibrant organization, so that the top knows what the bottom thinks, so that the bottom knows what the top thinks. Because in between, you've got roles to be performed. That's why they always say middle management is key in any organization, because they link the top to the bottom and link the bottom to the top. Middle managers spend more time with the guys at the bottom. They also spend time with the guys at the top. So they're a very good link, very strong link between the top and the bottom. I've got 2 minutes to go. The long-term view aspect by leadership is very important for motivation. Remember what I said earlier on, motivation in this module is about sustainability, it's about the long term, it's about something that will take root in the organization that will be effective in the long term. So leadership is part and parcel of that. Yeah. Because they are the ones who superintend motivation. They are the ones who gauge it. If it's going down, they are the ones who find out the reasons. And they are the ones who then come up with policies designed to ensure that motivation levels do not decline. Then the last item, that leadership must be authentic, I think we covered the issue of promises to be kept and ethics to be adhered to is key. The monetary versus the monetary rewards aspect is not key in this module, because to me, those are short-term gimmicks. If you believe that the ultimate motivation has to do with money, then you've got a problem. You see, money will give you short-term motivation levels, but long-term, you need sustained motivation, and it's not to do with salary or wages. Yeah. Employees have been known to resign from high-paying jobs into less-paying jobs in the quest to achieve motivational levels. How do you explain that? How does somebody leave a high-paying job and join a low-paying company? How do you explain that? The answer is, when we discuss intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, you will know where the answer lies. So at this stage, can I invite Fungai to do the summary for us, after which I'll give the parting remarks, and you can go into the breakout lunchtime session. Thank you. Fungai?
Thank you, Doc. Kindly confirm if I'm audible.
Yes, very much so.
Okay,
And
thank you very
Trevor, I
much.
must say, ever since I started to use Zoom for lectures, it's the first time I've had a lecture from morning to lunch uninterrupted. So I hope our afternoon session will be as smooth as this. I'm very impressed. Fungai, over to you.
Thank you, Doc, and good afternoon to you all. I've managed to summarize our lecture from the time we started up to the time we have ended right now. So the doc have covered several key topics, which includes the following. One, there's leadership attributes and their importance in organizational success. And the second one being the difference between leadership and management. And also, the doc covered the concept of self-mastery and its role in effective leadership. As well, the doc covered the importance of motivation, coaching, as well as mentoring in leadership. Again, there was the doc mentioned on the emergence of the knowledge worker and its impact on leadership styles. Then as well, doc mentioned on the need for ethical leadership and doing the right thing versus just doing things right. As well as lastly, you mentioned on coaching and mentoring, and he said on coaching and mentoring, they cost money and they cost money and patience is needed in doing this process of coaching and mentoring. So the doc also emphasized the importance of flexibility, adaptability, and context in leadership. He also discussed the role of emotional intelligence and the need for leaders to balance various attributes such as intelligence, trustworthiness, humanness, courage, as well as discipline. And also included interactive elements with all of us, and some students were contributing their thoughts and experiences. He managed to give the floor some time to discuss and tell us what they think or what they know about certain topics. So as well, Dr. Also mentioned upcoming assignments and the importance of summarizing the lecture content as well. So I'm sure we all got it on the assignments that we are supposed to do, when we are supposed to do them, and how we are going to submit them. That is all I have for the summary of this lecture.
Thanks, Fungai, for the summary. And I think you covered all the key points. To the class, is there anything else that Fungai overlooked that we covered? Anybody? So it looks like Fungai covered virtually everything. So thanks to you, and let me give my parting comments for this session, and then you can break into your groups. My comments will focus more on the GCA. What I said earlier on, let me reinforce it. I think the groups now have to meet between now and 3 o'clock to discuss the topic at hand. Let me read the topic again so that we are all on the same page. The topic is as follows: organizational motivation is a function of leadership. Discuss. Motivation in organizations is a function of leadership. Discuss. I think throughout the entire morning, that issue has been coming up. So you are well equipped to go into GCA to discuss the link between motivation and leadership and what makes leadership unique to develop and boost motivation. So it's a fairly straightforward issue, straightforward assignment topic that you can now tackle. And obviously, you're going to have your own experiences in your own workplaces and your other associations so that you can embellish the answer more. So what I suggest is, can the respective group leaders convene their group members, discuss the topic, come up with a presentation, and each group must select the best presenter amongst themselves to present, because I may not award marks in the presentation, but I'll keep that presentation in mind when I'm awarding marks next week to your particular group class assignment. So, select your strong presenters, because they have to do justice to the group and to the topic. And the last thing you want to do is to select somebody who is going to be stammering all the way, because it doesn't do justice to the group and to the topic itself. So amongst yourselves, select the best presenter who then represent the group as the topic sees fit. So the sequence of presentations will be fairly straightforward. It's going to be based on first come, first served. So what I suggest, around 10 to 3, the groups that are ready can send me messages to say we are ready, so that I can do the lineup of presentations by 3 o'clock. Then I'll send you a WhatsApp message, or I can even communicate on Zoom to say we are starting with group 1, then group number 4, and then group number 7, so that we save on time. Because time is moving, and let's use it as efficiently as possible. So are there any questions as far as the GCA is concerned? We've got 5 or so minutes before we break. Now back to the Zoom. Trevor, what are we doing with the link? Are we leaving the link open until 3 o'clock, or we are going to shut it down and revise it or reopen it at 3?
I think we can shut it down, then open it maybe around 2:45.
If you shut it, won't we run the risk of having a problem after 3? Because from previous experience that has happened, where you shut a link, then you try to resume and you can't.
I think I will have to liaise with Ms. Mashunganyika.
I think, yeah, liaise with the GSB. I think if we shut it for that period, we'll save money, but we don't want to end up with connectivity problems if we try to resume at 3.
It's okay.
So talk to them. Then what you can do is, after talking to GSB, you can inform us on the WhatsApp group regarding what we're doing.
Okay, Doc.
But I must say, I'm impressed. I mean, Zoom has never done this to us or to me. Yeah, ever since I started using it. Yeah, it has always been coming on and off, but this one has been fantastic. Since 9 o'clock, no hitch. I hope this continues into the afternoon. So Trevor and the rest of the students, let's break there and let's reconvene at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Doc. Enjoy your lunch.